Welcome to our deep dive. We're tackling one of history's most bone-chilling unsolved mysteries today.
Definitely a good one.
It's the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Yeah.
February 1959.
Oh, yeah.
Right in the heart of the Soviet Union. Picture this. 9 experienced hikers, led by this guy, Igor Dyatlov, venturing into the Ural Mountains.
Tough terrain.
They end up dead.
And under the most mysterious circumstances you can imagine.
Seriously mysterious. What makes it so captivating? Well, think /tent, missing clothes.
Injuries that make no sense.
Exactly. And that's not all. The official investigation, super secretive, total Soviet-era style. So, are you ready to dig in? We're going to explore all the known facts, the top theories.
And try to figure out why this case is still so talked about after all these years.
It really is fascinating how it just keeps gripping people.
Well, I think the lack of a solid answer is a big part of it.
Oh, absolutely. We have their diaries, photos.
Official reports, you name it.
Even modern science has weighed in.
It's like a puzzle, but with missing pieces.
And even the pieces we do have just don't quite fit.
Exactly.
Before we get to all the chilling details of what happened, I think it's important to really understand who these hikers were. They were more than just, names or faces in a photo.
Right.
These were students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute.
Full of life. Ambitious.
They had this thirst for adventure.
And their diaries and letters really bring those personalities to life.
They really do. They give you a window into their world.
Hopes, fears, the whole thing.
Especially when you consider what was going on back then. The historical context. This was the post-Stalin thaw.
A time of more openness in the Soviet Union, a bit of optimism in the air.
Right. These young people were part of a generation that really believed in things like progress, science.
They believed in their country's future.
Their story, it embodies that spirit, that optimism, that thirst for adventure.
I see that.
Take Lyudmila Dubinina's diary entry, for example.
What about it?
She wrote about this hilarious encounter on the train. A drunk man accused the boys of stealing his vodka.
Oh, no.
It just shows their sense of humor, how close they were.
They had that camaraderie.
She even mentioned seeing a romantic Austrian musical.
Really?
Yeah, and how much it lifted everyone's spirits.
It's those little details that really make them human.
It's what makes their story even more tragic.
Absolutely. It emphasizes their normalcy,
Right.
The everyday moments that came right before this extraordinary, terrible thing happened.
It makes you remember they were real people with dreams, hopes, not just characters in some mystery.
Exactly.
And then there's Igor Dyatlov, the leader.
Yeah, what about him?
His diaries show this bright, ambitious guy, super into radio engineering, fascinated by space, cosmonautics.
Which makes sense. Sputnik had just launched.
The space race was captivating everyone.
Totally.
Dyatlov's interest in space, it really speaks to the bigger picture of what was happening in Soviet society at the time.
That drive for science, for discovery.
It makes their fate even more tragic, even more perplexing.
I agree.
It's really heartbreaking to think what they could have accomplished. Their journey cut short like that.
It is.
Speaking of their journey, let's trace their steps.
Okay.
We can use their diaries and the photos they took.
Like a map.
Their journey was a testament to how tough they were, how determined.
They faced harsh conditions.
Difficult trails.
You can almost feel that biting cold just reading their accounts.
And picture those breathtaking but unforgiving Ural Mountains.
Definitely.
And there's this one moment, super significant. One of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back.
Why?
He got sick. Tough decision. But it unknowingly saved his life.
Chilling to think about.
If he'd stayed with the group,
he might have met the same end.
His absence just deepens the mystery.
It does. It's like fate stepped in.
Just spared him from whatever happened to the others. Speaking of which, let's talk about that abandoned tent. The way the search party leader, Mikhail Sherevin, described it.
I've read his account.
Unsettling.
To say the least.
The tent, slashed open from the inside, belongings everywhere, footprints leading out into the freezing night.
It's like they just ran.
Blind panic.
Yeah.
No proper clothes, no gear.
And that detail about the vodka in the tent?
Sherevin wanted to toast to their health. But someone told him to toast to their eternal peace instead.
Chills.
Big time. It's like foreshadowing.
The contrast between the toast and what they were about to find.
And that the tent was cut open from the inside. What could have driven them to do that?
It's the question that's haunted everyone for decades.
And as the search went on, the mystery just got deeper.
With each body they found.
Each one adding more intrigue and horror.
It was clear this wasn't a normal hiking accident.
Something darker, more inexplicable happened on that mountain.
Agreed.
So there we have it. The stage is set for one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. But to really get a grip on this enigma, we have to dive into the investigation.
All the theories.
And the scientific evidence. Or the lack of it, which has just fueled endless debate and speculation.
Let's do it. Let's kick things off with that official investigation.
Okay.
It was, to put it mildly,
Yeah.
inconclusive.
Really?
The Soviets, they said the hikers died from a compelling natural force.
Oh, what?
Compelling natural force.
But they didn't say what that force actually was.
Nope. And that's the thing. That lack of clarity, plus the whole bizarre situation, it's fueled so much speculation.
It's like they knew more than they let on.
Maybe.
So that's where the theories come in, right? Trying to fill those gaps.
Exactly.
One of the big ones, the avalanche theory. It's been around forever, but...
It got a lot of attention again in 2020.
How? Why?
Russian authorities, they came out with new findings. They said a slab avalanche might be the culprit.
Hold on. If an avalanche hit their tent, wouldn't there be, like, obvious signs?
You'd think so, right?
Debris, signs of a snowslide, something?
Well, the investigators, they had an explanation for that.
Okay, what is it?
That night, the weather was insane. Hurricane-force winds, blizzard conditions,
Oh.
temperatures way below freezing, like negative 40 Celsius. They said that would have covered up any avalanche debris.
I guess that makes sense.
And then weeks of snowfall after the incident would have buried any remaining evidence.
So they're saying the hikers were just sleeping, totally unprepared. This slab avalanche hits out of nowhere.
They panic, cut their way out of the tent, run right into that blizzard.
And they weren't exactly dressed for that, were they?
Not at all. They had their sleeping clothes on, which could explain why some bodies were found with barely any clothes.
And others seem to have put on more layers.
Right.
It's a terrifying thought. Why didn't they just dig themselves out of the snow? Or build a shelter?
Well, the investigators think the group might have split up in all the chaos and confusion.
Okay.
Two of them, Doroshenko and Krivonyshenko, they were found near a Siberian pine.
What were they doing?
Looks like they were trying to start a fire. But they weren't dressed for the cold at all.
So they probably died from hypothermia pretty quickly.
Most likely.
And Dyatlov, he was found with two others further up the slope.
Yeah, it seems like they were heading back to the tent.
Maybe for warmer clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Or their sleeping bags.
But they didn't make it.
Their positions suggest they got hit with hypothermia too.
Collapsing in the snow, fighting against that wind.
So the avalanche theory, it kind of makes sense for those 5 deaths.
So far, so good.
But then there's the other 4 hikers, the ones found months later, down in a ravine
Right.
with those horrific injuries.
That's where the avalanche theory gets tricky.
We're talking crushed ribs,
Fractured skulls.
even a missing tongue,
It's a level of force that's hard to explain with just an avalanche.
even a slab avalanche.
Exactly. That's where the 2020 investigation got a bit more specific. They said those 4 hikers,
Yeah.
they were probably dressed better. Maybe they made it further down the slope.
Okay.
They might have even built a temporary shelter in the snow near the ravine.
But how does that explain the injuries? It still feels like a big jump to blame that on a collapsed snow shelter or a fall.
It's definitely the weak point of the theory. A lot of experts aren't buying it.
Why not?
They say the terrain, it wouldn't have caused a slab avalanche that strong, and the injuries don't match up with typical avalanche victims. Plus, if an avalanche was powerful enough to cause that much damage, why wasn't the tent more destroyed?
That's true. So the avalanche theory, even with those 2020 updates, it doesn't quite fit.
Not perfectly.
So what are some other explanations?
Well, there's the katabatic winds theory.
Katabatic.
There are these powerful, unpredictable winds that can come rushing down mountainsides. A Swedish-Russian expedition in 2019, they liked this theory.
Interesting.
They said the landscape of Dyatlov Pass, it's similar to a place in Sweden where katabatic winds caused a fatal hiking accident back in 1978.
So are they saying those winds were so strong they made the tent feel like it was collapsing?
That's the idea, forcing the hikers to cut their way out, find shelter elsewhere.
And maybe in all the panic, they stumbled into that ravine, explaining the injuries.
Yeah. Under the right conditions, katabatic winds can be devastating. Hurricane-force speeds.
Wow.
Enough to cause serious damage, even to the landscape itself.
But would wind alone be enough to cause those bone-crushing injuries?
It's a good question. Some people who support the wind theory say it was a combination of things.
Like what?
The winds, plus a fall into the ravine, maybe a collapsed snow shelter. But even then, the theory has its problems.
It seems like we're missing a key piece of the puzzle. What about infrasound?
Infrasound.
Yeah, those low-frequency sound waves we can't hear. I've read they can mess with people, cause disorientation, anxiety, even hallucinations.
That's an interesting one. Dyatlov Pass, it's known for its strong winds that could create infrasound.
So maybe the hikers were exposed to a lot of it.
It's possible.
And that explains their strange behavior.
Yeah.
Fleeing the tent in a panic like that.
Like something was driving them, but they couldn't see or hear it.
Wouldn't the investigators have at least considered infrasound?
It's hard to say. We don't know a lot about the original Soviet investigation.
Yeah.
And even today, the effects of infrasound on humans are still up for debate. So maybe it wasn't on their radar back in '59.
It's frustrating. We might never know for sure what role, if any, infrasound played. And then there's that whole thing about Sanka, the Mansi woman. She said she saw a bright, burning object in the sky that night.
I remember reading about that.
Could it have been a meteor? A rocket launch? Something that scared the hikers? Or somehow caused the tragedy?
It definitely adds another layer to the mystery. But we don't have any hard evidence to connect her sighting to what happened up on that mountain.
Right.
It could have been something completely unrelated. Maybe her story got twisted over time.
But it's also possible there's a connection we haven't figured out yet.
True.
It's like a dead end. But you still can't help but wonder what's out there. We've talked avalanches, crazy winds, infrasound, even stuff in the sky. And none of it completely explains everything.
It's true.
What about the Mansi people? The ones who lived in that area?
Ah, yes. That theory came up early on. People thought maybe they attacked the hikers.
Really?
But there was zero evidence. No signs of a fight, no weapons. The Mansi themselves, they were adamant. They said they had nothing to do with it.
Did they help with the search?
They actually helped find the bodies, which makes it even less likely they were involved.
Okay, so the investigators ruled out foul play. At least in the Mansi.
Seems like it.
And that leaves us with...
the conspiracy theories.
Right. Secret experiments, Yeti encounters, aliens, government cover-ups.
They're definitely more exciting than plausible.
But they show just how powerful this mystery is.
Yeah.
How much it captures our imaginations.
It's that need to find answers, to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, even if those answers are out there.
I get that.
But for me, the most compelling part of this whole thing isn't the crazy theories.
What is it then?
It's the human story at the heart of it. 9 young people, full of potential. And their journey ends like this.
It's true. Their diaries, their photos, they give us this little glimpse into who they were, what they dreamed of.
And that's what sticks with you. That sense of loss, the unanswered questions. It still resonates all these years later.
Absolutely. Makes you realize that even now, with all our fancy tech and scientific progress, there are still mysteries out there.
That we can't easily explain.
Mysteries that remind us.
There's still so much we don't know.
And that there are limits to what we can understand.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's part of why the Dyatlov Pass incident is so alluring.
You think so?
No definitive answers.
So we keep searching.
Keep coming up with theories.
Trying to make sense of it all.
It's a puzzle that really gets you thinking critically.
Weighing the evidence.
Considering all these different viewpoints.
It's a case that definitely sparks the imagination.
I mean, look at all the books, documentaries.
Entire online communities.
All dedicated to solving this mystery.
Decades later.
People are still trying to crack the code.
Poring over every detail, debating the theories.
Hoping to find that one piece of evidence.
That unlocks the truth.
It really shows the power of a good mystery.
To grab hold of our collective imagination.
We're drawn to the unexplained, the enigmatic.
It makes us question what we think we know.
Push the boundaries of our knowledge.
Face the possibility that some things
might always be beyond our grasp.
That's a humbling thought.
It's also a humbling reminder of how powerful nature can be.
Whether it was an avalanche, those katabatic winds,
Infrasound,
or something else we haven't even thought of.
The Dyatlov Pass incident shows us we're not always in control.
Even with the best plans, all our knowledge and experience.
Nature can still catch us off guard.
With its raw power.
It's a sobering thought.
The line between our world and the wilderness.
It's thinner than we think.
And sometimes
the forces of nature,
they can disrupt everything.
In ways we can't even fathom.
It's true.
The Dyatlov Pass incident, it's a chilling reminder of that.
A story of adventure tragedy.
And a mystery that just won't quit.
It forces us to face the limits of what we can understand.
And to admit.
There are things out there.
We just don't know.
And probably never will.
It's a story that'll likely keep being told,
Debated.
investigated.
For years to come.
It reminds us to stay curious,
To keep exploring.
to never stop asking questions.
Even when those answers seem impossible.
Or scary.
Because it's in that search for answers.
And that journey of discovery.
That we really learn and grow.
And speaking of journeys of discovery,
if
you're into stories like the Dyatlov Pass incident,
hooked on the unexplained, the mysterious,
then you'll love the All Sorts podcast.
It's your guide to all the strange and fascinating corners of our world.
We dig into everything.
Historical mysteries, scientific breakthroughs,
weird cultural stuff, the inner workings of the human mind.
Each episode is like a deep dive
into a different topic.
So if you're ready for a new adventure,
full of knowledge and discovery,
make sure you subscribe to the All Sorts podcast on YouTube.
And follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads.
We'll be your companions on this journey.
Uncovering the hidden wonders.
Exploring those mysteries that make our world so endlessly fascinating.
Until then, stay curious.
And keep exploring.